Father, thank you for those of us who are doing Passover this week. Thank you for reminding us to do it. Thank you for your unleavened bread, removing the sin from our lives. And thank you for Yeshua coming to show us how to do it all. Father, that we just continue to grow, continue to love your word, and that you remember us in the dispersion. You said when we start doing these things, you would turn and remember us and see us doing it. Father, just reading the story again of Moses, Moshe, and then I was just inspired by Joshua. What a man. What a man he was. Father, that I aspire to be more like him, uncompromising, that we all become more like him. In whose name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Affirmations.
Hallelujah.
Better with it off, Eric.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to turn the camera off, and away we go. See you in a bit.
All right. So, this week, I was going to talk about the map. I was going to talk about the map. I am going to, but we're going to talk about one other thing first. And being that we won't be here next week, I sent Kurt actually 13 pages of a regard of this map here, which can be found if you go to erictology.net, go to graphics, and I have a slightly colorized version, which isn't on the internet. Nobody has it yet. I'll make it available later. So if somebody wants to print it out, a little bit of blue in the water, a little bit of green in the foliage. It's a little bit nicer, but I haven't had a chance to get to it. It's buried on a flash drive somewhere. But my point is, I wrote up a dozen pages regarding this map, and it should probably end up being a booklet that I'll have to do later. So what Kurt has that he's making available to y'all on the chat format, I believe, is for a guide of your own perusal, your own study, your own consideration. I made this map in 2017, and I figured, well, I'll just wait before I disclose the solution to it, give people a chance to look at it, but I don't know that many, if any, have. And then I tried to do it, and it was pretty difficult because it's like, what am I looking at? Where do you start? So what I tried to write up here was a guide to what does that mean? Where do you start? What is this that I'm looking at? So when I sent Kurt these 13 pages, let me just walk through what those 13 pages are. And the last 2 pages, I found something incredibly interesting yesterday, Shabbat. So I remember there's a certain verse where YHUH says, and it will be for me a matter of great rejoicing. He's looking forward to a certain time, a certain event, a certain situational occasion, not necessarily time on the clock, but so when circumstances are such that he says, whoa, boy, this is what I'm about. Yes, sir. What is that? So I looked it up, and it's actually in Jeremiah 33, and I think it was verse 6 or verse 9. And so the last 2 pages of this week's study, verse 9, Jeremiah 33, 9. And then I started, and I thought, well, to get the context of verse 9, you got to back up, go to verse 1. And man, I found something just mind-blowing in verse 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time on that, probably in the second hour. But let me back up to give you an analysis of this map. I did do one partial analysis of the map. I was up in Montana. Schlagmeister was videoing. The word schlag is snow. This, Pete is basically a champion skier. The video opens up. It was a really cold day. Got the heavy leather jacket and turn around with binoculars. Why the binoculars? When I bumped into this binocular 2-eye view, It was when 2005 when I happened to look at Daniel 12:4. Just a little bit of the story. I didn't read Hebrew, was not able to recognize any of the modern Hebrew letters. And I mentioned they look like ants, bulbous parts, little thin parts, and they almost seem to move. You try to focus your eyes on these things, and it's like, what the flame letters, modern Hebrew, hardly able to recognize as letters, kind of like looking at Arabic and maybe Chinese or something. But a friend got me a Tanakh, Hebrew Old Testament, essentially. English on one side, Hebrew on the other, Stone Tanakh. And I just sat down and I opened it somewhere around the middle. I just opened it up to look at it, and it happened to be Daniel 12. And all of a sudden, my eyes just locked on to this symmetrical word, in that it was, I didn't know at the time, but it was Ayin Dalet hyphen Ayin Tav. A 4-letter word, hyphen, 2 letters, there's an ayin, and it's like, what am I looking at? And I was able to figure out, look at an interlinear if you don't know how to read or translate it, and it was until the time. What time? So the Archangel Gabriel is speaking to Daniel, the prophet, last chapter of the book, chapter 12. And in verse 4, he says to Daniel, hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end. For many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. And then it goes on, that's Gabriel speaking to Daniel. Then it goes on to Daniel explaining something. He says, then I, Daniel, looked, and I saw one on this side of the river and one on that side of the river, and one above the waters of the river, and that one was clothed in white linen. And he says, hey, you. Now, he didn't say, hey, but I'm saying that for a reason. How long till the end of these wonders? And that guy above the waters of the river, clothed in white linen. So it's referencing this guy that he's now talking about to the guy he saw just a moment ago. So there's a correlation to. He says, how long till the end of these wonders? And that guy held up his right hand and his left hand and swore by him who lives forever. Now, as I'm reading through this, it's like, okay, you're telling us the story. No, wait a minute. All of a sudden I was thinking, until the time, what time? What time? How's anybody supposed to know what time it is? Hence, I mentioned a couple weeks ago about the song from Chicago, the band. And the thought just in my head, what if if you look at the spelling of the word that says until the time, it'll tell you what time that is. That thought just landed in my mind. Why would I think such a thing? Who's to say what thoughts fleet through in and out? That's crazy talk, man. Well, is it crazy talk, or is it perhaps the voice of the Ruach, perhaps an angelic messengers going, hey, look at that. Well, okay, people have their own experience in life, and I can't put a label on the source of that voice, but, if you look at the spelling of the word that says until the time, it'll tell you what time that is. What does that even mean? And so then I started looking at the meaning of the letters. That was the beginning of looking at the meaning of the letters. Ayin Dalet hyphen, yoked, connected with Ayin Tav. One word spelled with 4 letters, essentially, or was it 2 words? They were yoked, they were held. You can separate them. When did the hyphens come in? Was that in the ancient script, or was that Masoretic Nikud, extra stuff put in? I don't know. So I choose to just look at a hyphenated word as one big word for some reason. So if you say in Genesis 1:1, et hashemayim, Aleph Tav stands alone, va'et ha'aretz, that va'et was hyphenated with ha'aretz. They still count that as its own word. So there's 7 words in the sentence. But it kind of is and kind of isn't. Just so you know, we're just talking about the structure of the language. Is it 2 words? Is it 1 word? So when I started doing the analysis of Psalm 119, the first time through, it's like, well, if there's a hyphenated word, I'll just look at the first half of that, but then I thought, no, it's hyphenated for a reason. And so it might elaborate the significance. Let me look at the hyphenated words as if they were one word. So that's just what I've determined to do, just so you know. So if you look at the spelling of ayin, dalet, ayin, tav, ayin is an eyeball. But what does it mean, eyeball? It's not just the physical object. You look in Klein's dictionary, and it also means look well to, evaluate, measure, weigh, balance exactly. In other words, if you were an accountant and you were responsible for every dollar, every $1 million, boy, you'd sit there and you'd give me the receipts. I'm going to, total these things up. Now we have computers to do it, but back when I was a kid, you had to do the math yourself. There was no calculators. I remember when my dad first got a calculator because he was an engineer. And it's like, whoa, look at that. Before that, it was literally a slide rule or an abacus is all you had. I remember a friend had an adding machine back in the 1960s, and it was like, woohoo, look at that, punch numbers and pull the lever, and it brings up totals, and it was an amazing gizmo. Nowadays, we don't even have to think. We just punch in numbers, boom, it's done. But what I'm saying is that that's the meaning of the letter ayin. To be really, really exact. Balanced scales of judgment. Exact balance. That's ayin. Ayin dalet. Dalet means door. So calculate, examine, scrutinize, determine. You better be right about what door? What door? There's no door in Daniel 12. Then it's hyphenated with ayin tav. Well, ayin again, determine. Tav, what is tav? Well, you look up and it's the name of the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, sure, but what does that mean? It means a mark, a sign, a symbol, a target. If you see a red octagon on the roadside, you know that that's a stop sign, or you better know. It's a stop sign, red octagon. And whether you can read the word stop or whether it's written in some other language, it's been determined, maybe even internationally, that a red octagon means stop. A red triangle means yield. In fact, we have 3 colored lights on the stop light, the go light. Green, yellow, red. When you see green, okay, that's just plugged into your consciousness. That means go, red means stop. Who came up with that? It evolved as cultural evolution? Whatever. The point is, symbols mean something. So the shape of the X, which is the paleo letter tav, and whether the X is this format or turned this way, perpendicular and horizontal, it's a scratch mark of cross sticks. It means a marker sign. A marker sign of what? Whatever you mean it to mean. So you could say one of the famous logos of all times, what's called the Nike swish. Well, Nike is a Greek word that means victory, championship, athletic foot apparel, running shoes. Okay. But when you see that swoosh, they've so capitalized on that, what's called a logogram. Logo is where we get the word in Greek for word or speaking voice. Gram is also a Greek word, which is a glyph, a graphic, something written. Grammar school teaches you how to format what's written. Same basically words. So a logogram is 2 Greek words meaning a glyph, a carving, a picture that speaks. So essentially, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are all logograms, thematic logograms. But that's what essentially the shape of the letter tav means, the X. As a matter of fact, legally, if you're illiterate and you can't sign your name, because of the intent, if somebody presents you with a contract and they said sign here, even if you just put an X, that's signing your name. Your name isn't spelled X, but it's showing the intent. So again, I'm trying to say that ayin tav is not just see the X, see the letter tav, see the finish, the last letter, but it means you understand the depth of the intent of each symbol. What symbol? Now, at this point, you have to say ayin dalet hyphen ayin tav. Somebody's got to now make up the rules. In other words, what symbol, what door? Well, it's written in Daniel 12:4. And the archangel Gabriel said, hide the words and seal the book until what time? Until the time that you comprehend the door, hyphenated, joined, yoked with, which in Hebrew happens to be the word spelled ayin lamed, yoke, bounded. Could also mean ayin mem, which means with. It also means people. But ayin dalet, yoked with ayin tav. What door? We're talking about the scriptures, which are written with letters, which are all logograms, so the tav must be the letters, or I choose to assign the value of understanding the meanings, the drawing, the orthography, the orthography. The shape of each letter is ayining tav. That's my assignment of that value. Somebody else could say, and come up with your own thing. Well, go ahead, play in your own sandbox. What's ayin dalet? The door, the door. What door? What door? Yeshua made it easy. He says, I'm the door. What? The Jews won't listen to him. He's an infidel. He's a scoundrel. So they won't listen to him. So the Jews who will not listen to Yeshua's voice have got to figure out what the door is by some other reckoning. So I don't know what they're going to come up with. But because I was raised as a believer in the New Testament, in Jesus Christ, I know that he is reported to have said, I am the door. So when I go back and analyze Daniel 12, and I say, this has something to do with the letters of the alphabet, maybe, because it says ayin tav. Gabriel walks up to Daniel and says, Daniel, I've got a job for you. Hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Okay, that's the job handed to you. That's your commission. That's kind of an Aleph thing. Aleph, start here. This is your job. Take it upon your mind. Now project your busy workmanship accomplishing the task until you hit the target, which is hide the word and seal the book. Until the time of the end is just kind of a besides, or that's a duration of the effect of the work you do, but your job is, okay, so Daniel's Aleph given to him by Gabriel was, hide the words and seal the book. Okay. Many shall run to and fro and knowledge shall increase is another concept. What does that even mean? Nobody knows. That's written in English. What does it say in Hebrew? Maybe there's something else there, but let's slip over that for a moment. Go to the next sentence. Then I, Daniel, looked. It's a whole different concept. And I saw one on this side of the river and that side of the river. Now I'm going to exaggerate. If I'm standing at the edge of the river and I look over there and I see somebody, and then I look over there and I see somebody, I can look back. Yep, there, that guy's there, and that guy's there. So for my head to go back and forth, well, guess what? There's a letter, the gimel. In modern Hebrew, it's called the letter with a foot. It's got a little appendage sticking out the bottom. In the Paleo, it's just basically the head and neck, or you turn it upside down and it looks like a leg with a foot, shaped like this. Modern Hebrew has a little coming up. A gimel means camel, but it also is a verb action in its essence of its meaning. If you ayin the tav of gimel, you'll know that it means to go back and forth. Camel in the desert is a ship, is a truck, is a transport vessel going from this city to that city, from here to there and back again, and just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Gimel mem means to heap up. How do you get a heap? You pick this up from here, you bring it over there, and you set it there. Then you go back and you get another one, you pick it up and you bring it over there. So we talk about when you see the word gam, even so is the way it's translated. It means back at you, reciprocal, mirror action. So the analysis of the language is not just learning the dictionary definition, or which is part of that, or looking at the orthographic shape of each letter and pondering, processing, and go, this is what's going on here. But there's also, as a logogram, thematic, what's the theme? What's the essence? What's happening? with this letter. And then when you combine like Gimel Mem and then Gimel Mem Lamed, what's the gist? There's more to the meaning than just the letter shape. So that's what has to be done in order to, I'm guessing, I'm suggesting, I'm theorizing that Daniel, in order to accomplish the task of hide the words and seal the book, he changed the shape of the letters from the Paleo-Hebrew to the modern, what's called Chaldean flame letters. Now, I don't have any proof of that. It's my own imagination. However, I was given a talk in 2006, and these two people came up after the talk. The talk was recorded. It's called So What? It's on erictology.net, 2006, down in Bend, Oregon. And these people said, we know that Daniel did that. We know that Daniel changed the orthography of the letters from the ancient Paleo into the modern Chaldean. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is common knowledge. Well, since then, I don't know who those two people were, nor do I know who they meant by we know. And a lot of people don't know. Maybe some people think that he did. Maybe somebody doesn't believe he did. How can it be proved one way or the other? It can't be. But when you look at the two verb actions, hide and seal, it's Samik Tav Mem and Het Tav Mem. Samik is an engineered structure like a backbone, like a trellis. That determines the shape. You go to a museum and you see dinosaur bones, and that determines the shape of the animal. So the Samik determines the shape of the letters. Het, a crypt, an enclosure, a castle, a prison. Put the seal. It makes sense. Just because it makes sense doesn't mean that's what it is, but I'm just telling you the essence of the theory of this Erictology study. And it was called Eric because of what Eric means. It means assess, appraise, evaluate, look well to, consider, figure it out. Very similar to Ayin Yod Nun. So it's a play on words. So the whole idea that you can ponder the spelling of a word, ponder the shape of a letter, well, what's Daniel doing? Now, it just so happened that I was thinking, I think there's about 15 verses or so in Daniel 12, that the first thing that Gabriel said, hey, Daniel, this is your job. Well, that's kind of an Aleph concept. Now, if I hadn't been thinking about the meaning of the letters, I would have never thought to think hide the words is a Aleph concept. But when Daniel said, I saw one on this side of the river and that side of the river, that seemed like a Gimel action. And then when he saw one above the waters of the river, now, regardless of who that is that Jesus Christ? Doesn't say so. Is it another angel? Doesn't say so. Is it a human? Doesn't say so. But by context, waters of the river, dressed in white linen, some human figure, it's kind of a Messiah sort of guy, maybe, kind of. And then to say, hey, you! Well, if the Aleph is the first position, because Aleph means one, and Bet means two, and Bet is many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase, and Gimel is going back and forth, and all of a sudden, this guy above, I'm just synchronized, or you might say, not synchronizing, but systematically going from one to the next to the next. The guy above the waters of the rivers in the Dalet position, fourth concept. And then when he says, hey, how, well, the fifth letter is hey, and hey is asking for insight or revealing, shining light on something, exposing. And then the Vav position, sequence order of the alphabet, the next letter, he's referring to that guy who's in the Dalet position again. And it's like, isn't that amazing that the one above the waters of the river, clothed in white linen, is in the Dalet position and the Vav position. And then when he holds up his right hand and his left hand, why, that looks like the shape of the Paleo letter Vav. Just so you know, that's why I draw the Vav as a kind of this U-shaped cup with a vertical line. Other people draw it with a zigzag with a line. There's different legitimate ways to draw the Vav, but I draw it that way because of Daniel 12. And he swore by him who lives forever. Well, it's translated a few different ways, that phrase. But to swear is the same word as seven, Shin Bet Ayin. to make a vow, to swear, it's all the number 7. The same exact word Shavah is both 7 and vow, and to get cursed for breaking the vow. So I'm noticing that cryptically, every next phrase is a phase of progression in Daniel 12. And then he said, I heard, but I didn't understand. Well, he said, wait a minute, swear by him who lives forever, that it would be for time, times, and half a time. Now he's giving this containment. Well, that's the letter Het. And then he says, to the end or the completion of the fragmenting of the hands of the Kadosh people. Well, that would be in the letter Tet position. And what's Tet? Not a snake. People will say, well, Tet's a snake. Well, that's because snakes coil and go round. Tet's something round. A basket's round, and Tet, it's also said, is a full basket. What do you put in a basket? Crumbles, grain, crumbs. The fracturing, the crumbling, the crushing of the hands of the Kadosh people. Who's that? Supposed to be YHUH's people of Israel. Their hands have been stomped on and crushed. And so the fact that that's in the Tet position is an analytical consideration that that's only for a period of time. And when the time of the crushing of their hands, like crumbles that you'd put in a basket, when that's complete, when the basket's full, then what? Well, then the time of obfuscation is over. How long till the end of these wonders? Well, the word wonder is paleo, but if you look at the word spelled Pei-Tov, it also sometimes is translated wonder. I just looked in Strong's Concordance, and it's not in Klein's either, but I've seen it translated in the translation of the Tanakh. Pei-Tov can mean wonder. It's something that is openable that isn't necessarily open. The point is, hide the words and seal the book until the time with 2 eyes you see Yeshua correlated to the meanings of the letters. And that's going to correlate to the end of the crushing of the hands of the Kadosh people. But the word hand is Yod, which is also power and strength, privilege, opportunity. And Daniel then says, I heard, but I didn't understand. Well, the next letter after Tet is Yod, which means a hand to grab a hold of. And he's, I don't get it. And then the next letter is Kaf, which is like this open hand. Will you tell me again? Please tell me how long till the end of these wonders? The next letter in the alphabetic sequence is Lamed, and the angel says, go, Daniel. Well, the word Lakad is go. To you is also go. That's a voice of authority. Lamed Kaf. Well, what's Mem? The next letter. Mem is water, but it's also like this womb. It's a laboratory. It's to be like incubating in an egg. And he says the words are hidden and sealed till the time of the end. So what did Daniel do between when he was told to hide the words and then when they are hidden and sealed? Or did Daniel conduct something yet? Or was the angel saying, these matters are hidden and sealed from on high, and you are supposed to now exercise the physical realm doing of it, and they will remain in this mem state, hidden like in a womb, until the time of the end. End of what? Ayin Dalet Ayin Tav, the two eyes, which allows you to see something 3D. If you have 2 eyes looking at one object, you could get a 3-dimensional view. But you have to see it from both the thematic logogram meaning of each letter, Tav, and that Yeshua is the Dalet, the Vav, the Mashiach, and the word Shiach, Shin Yod Het, Mashiach is Mem Shin Yod Het, but Shin Yod Het doesn't just mean anointed, it means conversation, communication, amongst a couple other things. So the tangible mush, to touch and feel, the tangible communication, the conversation put in anthropomorphized human format. What conversation? What communication? 22 Hebrew letters. The 22 Hebrew letters put into a human essence. Well, gee, that's John 1:1. The word became flesh and dwelt among us. We beheld the glory. That's the Hebrew alphabet becoming a human being. They are hidden and sealed. And then the next phrase is, they will be elucidated, clarified, and refined by many. What will be? The letters? The language? But you get different translations, which will lead you a different way to think differently of that phrase. So what's being elucidated, clarified, and refined? The hidden letters, the hidden words? Where's the subject? And then it goes to the next position, which would be the psalmic, and it says, the wicked shall do wickedly. Well, what's it got to do with a psalmic? I thought psalmic was an engineered structure, a backbone. Well, it's like a lighthouse. It's like a watchtower. Yeshua talked about the good servant, the good steward over the vineyard who watched and kept. Then he talked about the bad stewards who sit there and ripped off the owner and abused the other servants and pillaged the benefits, stole the money. So this position of psalmic, like the menorah, is to say, do what he said or don't do what he said. So the menorah can represent being a good steward or not being a good steward. Well, that's essentially then the meaning of the psalmic. And none of them will understand. None of the wicked will understand. Well, the next letter was the ayin, and the ayin is an eyeball. So it's not only bearing fruit, but it also, as we said in the beginning, ayin dal and ayin tav, look well to consider, figure this out. No, they can't. They're not going to. They don't care. They're unable to. None of the wicked will understand, but the righteous will understand. Well, that's the next phrase, and that lines up with the pay. Why the pay? Well, the pay is that which opens, drawn like a mouth, but the pay is after the ayin, so it could mean not just open mouth, but open eye, open ear, open heart, anything that opens. A river that opens up to a bay, that's the delta, but that's the opening of the river. There's no mouth, there's no eye, I'm saying they're concepts, they're thematic logograms. And then, this is getting near the end of the alphabetic sequence. He talks about from the time the abomination of desolation is put in place. And how does that line up with the letter Zadi? I thought the word Zadi is righteousness. And people have talked about, well, what is the abomination of desolation? I remember a few years ago, somebody said, oh, it's Yasser Arafat's body, his corpse being buried on the Temple Mount. That's the abomination of desolation. And other people said, no, there's nukes that they're going to shoot in either from Jerusalem or into Jerusalem. And it's like, if you go back and look at the Hebrew words, just think for a moment, or again, we're looking at English, you have to look at the Hebrew, we're not going there, but the abomination which causes desolation. Well, there's one thing Yahuwah gave his people, which is his words, which he says in Ezekiel 20, I think it's like 4 times, he says, I gave you my words, which if a man does, he will live by them. But I think it's Ezekiel 20:24 says, because you guys kept refusing to listen to my voice and do what I said, and you wanted the ways of the pagans, your heathen neighbors, fine, I'll give you their ways. I'll give you bad laws that nobody can live by. You know, like wearing a mask and not going to work and not going out of your house and being billy clubbed for walking on the beach like in Australia recently, that type of thing. Bad laws that nobody can live by. That's what he'll give us if we refuse to walk in his ways. So what is the abomination which brings desolation? Not listening to his voice. What represents listening to his voice, which is the definition of righteousness? It says in, I believe, the Psalms, that righteousness, by definition, it only means doing good or victory, deliverance, and salvation, but it's doing what he said. That's determined as the meaning of righteousness. Unrighteousness is not doing what he said or disobeying what he said or not caring about what he said. And that's the issue all through the scripture. What was in the Ark of the Covenant, going back to the Mishkan pattern now, lining up with the letter Zadi, in the place called the Kadosh Kodashim, so it's also called the Dabar, which is word. Well, in the Ark of the Covenant was Aaron's rod that budded, a piece of the manna, and also the tablets of stone where Yahweh wrote with his own finger the instructions. Well, if we walk according to those ways, and then there's meaning to Aaron's rod that budded and the manna being in there. But if we walk according to Yahuwah's ways, there is no abomination and there's no desolation. It's quite the opposite. It's everything flourishing, which is a picture of the Zodi, this sprout. So it's when you do away with Yahuwah's words, claim that you have a different regard, a different covenant, no concern. Oh, that's a disgusting law that nobody can live by. So there are people who have said for the last few years, actually, somebody said it was talked about 50 years ago and probably longer ago than that, that the Torah, the Sefer, the scroll of the Torah itself, Hebrew teachers are teaching this. The Torah itself is bad laws that nobody can live by. And they justify it by a verse in Leviticus. They say, you can believe that if you want, go ahead. But is that the abomination which causes desolation? If so, what are we looking for when we're thinking, well, is it Yasser Arafat's bones or... Listen, thematic logograms. If you walk in Yahuwah's ways, there's a sprout of life and resurrection, like Yeshua coming back out of the grave, pictured by the letter Zadi. Okay, so Yeshua's life story, gospel narrative, from Aleph all the way through Tav, fits the meanings of the letters. That's Ayin Dalet. Knowing what the letters are and what they mean, that's Ayin Tav. And when you see the Zadi is his resurrection from the dead, jumping out of the grave. Pezadi means explode, detonate, and open mouth. The grave opened up. Yeshua sitting on the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, spoke, and it fits the Mishkan pattern also. All these things fit like a code. That's Zadi. And it's talking to Daniel 12 about the abomination of desolation. And then it gives another overview of time. Was it 1330 or 1200? Say, I always get confused at this point. Anyway, that's the Kuf. That's the overview. That's raised up, and you see this dome structure. And then he says, blessed is the man. Well, the next letter is Resh, an honorable man, an exalted man. Blessed is the man who waits and comes to, I think there's the 1330 days or years. And people say, hey, you're changing. It's like, listen, you can see it's written Yod Mem, which is technically days, but even in Stone's Tanakh, it's translated years because the translators switch around. Is a day a 24-hour day, or is it a year? It's both. It's not me making it up. It's the translators. It's the way the language works, just so you know. Or is it 1,000 years? The point is, that's in the rest position. And then in the Shin, the next letter, it says, Daniel, but you go your way. Burn out your flame. You'll come to your end and rest. Okay, that's like your fire going out. Shin is teeth or fire. And then the last verse of Daniel 12, and arise to your portion at the end of days. That's in the position of the letter Tav. That's the promise. You go, okay, well, so what? What I just did is show you that Daniel 12 is written as a code. Is that what Daniel did? Is this how Daniel hid the map of the meaning of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet? So Pei and Ayin are not reversed. There's no letter Gayan, a second letter Ayin plugged in. These are objections that people have presented over the years. What I'm saying is that when I saw that the Daniel 12 narrative actually was a treasure map, that was the spark for drawing this treasure map. But I'm trying to give you a grounding. Now, just for what it's worth, if the first page was actually, I was going to write it up as page 1. We'll get to that in a minute. But then the last page from last week that we never got a chance to talk about was talking about the city called Ziklag, which was David's personal city before he moved to Jerusalem. So that's called map 1A, 319, but up at the top it says page 5 of 31222, which was last week, not to be confusing. So you look at the word Ziklag. Well, why did he call it that? That's just the name of a town. No, it's Zion, the 7th letter, Zion Kuf Lamed Gimel, Ziklag. So that's in 1 Samuel 27. So a little bit of the analysis as we've done. Zion Kuf, what does that mean? Chained, fetter, tightened, constricted, but it's also spark or fiery arrow. If it's a chain, how can it be a fiery arrow? It's just the language. But Zion Kuf, well, Zion is a weapon. And what's kuf? Well, like I said, kuf means to rise up or to plant down. But if you turn kuf sideways, you can almost see a bow. It's orthography. There's the curved part and the straight part. That's like a bow and arrow. And Zion is a weapon. A fiery arrow is a powerful weapon. Is that what's in Zion kuf? We're just looking at the shapes of the letters and the meaning of the letters. If you look at Zion kuf hey, like the word chain, which has nothing to do with an arrow, tie, attachment, need, relationship. See, if you have a relationship with somebody or something, it's because there's a need and a satisfaction of the need, whether it's fellowship, whether it's food, whether it's provision. Somebody's dependent. Zion kuf nun, zakon, is actually bearded one or old man. But it also means dependent. When you're very young and when you're old, you're dependent on assistance. That's just the way it works. So zakan, Zion kuf nun, also means elder, scholar, or bearded one. Doesn't say anything about dependence, but I'm showing you the relationship of the words. So it's to be chained to somebody helping you. You can't climb up ladders to fix the roof anymore. You got to go find somebody else to do the job. That type of a thing. But Zion kuf vav kuf, you take the second letter, duplicate it, make the third, stick a yod or a vav in there, purified, refined, distilled. What's that got to do with a chain or a fiery arrow or an old man? I was listening to a guy on the radio, a Native American elder. He says there's a difference between being elderly and being an elder who is considered to be wise and have a distinguished countenance about him. Well, that's purified, refined, and distilled. Zion kuf vav kuf yod tav is a rocket. Well, that's a type of fiery arrow. Okay. Ziklag, Zion kuf lamed gimel. Well, what about kuf lamed? Light, swift, easy, no big deal, unimportant. The reason my talk in 2006 was titled "So What?" I didn't even know that was the Hebrew word, but I labeled it that because here it was, this incredible disclosure of this ancient mystery, and I knew that many people's attitude was like, so what? You think it's a big deal? So what? So what? What are you going to do with that? What do you make of that? You could be looking at bugs in the ground and go, ooh, look, they're walking around. So what? That's what bugs do. So what? This is like the greatest mystery of the entire universe of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Does that make me nuts? Or does that make me just simply, gee, I got my eyes open and I can see what it is? Well, each man for himself. But that's what kuf lamed means. And then you have to look at lamed gimel, ziklag, lamed gimel. Well, lag is a liquid measure, a lager, a type of a beer type thing that you drink. But lamed gimel is also where you get the word logos, logo, legal, legion, legislate, lagaria, which is excessive use of words, a deep vessel, lagoon, a deep bowl of water, legitimate. And then laglag, which is lamed gimel, is the opposite side of being like really serious words. It means mock, sneer, or deride. See, every word has the other things around it. So what I've tried to say is that when you have the logogram of the letter or even a word, it's like the nucleus of an atom, and all the various meanings are like the swarm of electrons around it that are always kind of moving. And we're really trying to zone in on what's the nucleus, essence, the theme of that word or that letter. But it includes the electrons. It includes all the various derivative meanings, and that's just the way the language is built. So if you look up Ziklag in the dictionary, it just says it's David's city. So the only way to really analyze what's going on is to look at these pieces. If you look at kuf lamed gimel, leave off the Zion now, and you look at klag, it has a somic. Well, why does it have a somic? Well, in Greek, masculine singular, they stick a us. So did this pick up over the years? Sometimes you just have to look at it. It's a etymological dictionary, Klein's, and so it looks at other languages, how affected, and sometimes it'll say FW, foreign word. It's like, it doesn't mean to throw it away. It just means the Hebrew word became this foreign word that comes back into Hebrew. They've lost track that it started as Hebrew. It's part of the investigation study. But if you look at Kuf Lamed Gimel Kalag, that's where you get the word Caligula, who was that just a horrible, vicious Roman emperor. But Kuf Lamed Gimel Clog, well, that's like a clog, kind of a heavy boot. Don't the Scottish do, like, isn't it called clog dancing? With these, not like lightweight shoes, but heavy shoes, I think. Anyway, Kuf Lamed Gimel Samik Klagas means soldier, warrior, and heavy military boot. That's not Ziklag, but that's 3 of the 4 letters with another letter added. Let's put all these things together. One other thing is, if you look at Kuf Lamed, because we're looking at Zion, Kuf Lamed Gimel, Kuf Lamed Dalet. Well, Lamed Dalet is where you get the word child, or Yilad, Yod Lamed Dalet, which means to give birth. Kuf Lamed Dalet, it says, means he opened with a key. Like, it's another derivative of giving birth. Well, there's no Dalet in Ziklag, but the Kuf Lamed is there. And again, I'm showing you process of analysis in the dictionary, and this is just one word. Zion Kuf, Zik. If you look at the word Zadi, Vav, it means command. Zadi, Vav, Vav, Tav is a military team. Like, it's the root of the word for Zion, Mount Zion. Zadi Yod Vav Nun, I'm looking at Zadi Vav Vav Tav. I thought we were looking at Ziklag, Zion Kuf. I'm trying to show you some banyan tree connections here. Zadi Vav Vav Tav means military team, elite relationship of those who are under command. The word Sinai, Samik Yod Nun Yod, means erudite scholarship. If you look at Ziklag, you've got these military boots, and it's essentially like a hornet's nest. When they come pouring out, it's like a hail of fiery arrows. It's streaming one after another. It's like this chain of vengeance, which David's army was. It was a small army, but that's basically a picture of outpours heavy boots in a hail of fiery arrows. So if you look at Kuf Lamed Gimel, no big deal, not an imposition. A league of legal wordsmiths, proudly exulting ones exuberant over my grandeur, like we read in Isaiah 13. Basically what we're doing. Zion Kuf Lamed Gimel, Ziklag. For the kingdom of heaven to manifest, it is chained to, dependent on, prerequisite that Israel listens to the voice of Yahuwah and obeys his command wholeheartedly. Well, that's the upshot of everything we've been reading through all these different scriptures. And I'm projecting that into the spelling of the word Ziklag based on all these other things that we were talking about that are legitimately in the spelling of the letters. But you're not going to find in the dictionary that Ziklag means this. I'll say it again. For the kingdom of heaven to manifest. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. For that to happen, it's prerequisite that Yahuwah's people, those who determine of their own volition they want to be, teamed up, following his command, doing what he said wholeheartedly. Shema. Listen to his voice. Which is why we're doing this. Okay, one other little thing here that I have at the top of this page. Kuf Lamed Dalet means to open with a key. It comes from the Greek word, this is what Klein says, kleidos. It's a piano key, a typewriter key, from the Greek word kleis. Well, there's another word in Hebrew that I bumped into before, which is spelled tav, kaf, vav, nun, takon. And it literally means planning, designing. It's the word for peacock, perhaps also parrot, and it's the word for astronomy. and it means to arrange something like a minefield, like typewriter keys, like the piano keys. It means to intentionally arrange, fix, regulate, measure, weigh, put space between the contents. It's the design of the alphabet. The same word that means the design of a peacock with its tail, the design of a minefield, the design of typewriter keys, the design of this constellations, the design of the alphabet. It's the act of planning and designing, and it also means to examine. Tav, Kaf, Pei, if you're looking at Kav, Faf, Tav, Kaf, Nun, it's one of the next words in the dictionary sequence alphabetic order. It means join together, frequency, in succession, like chained together, which is a synonym with Zayin Kuf, which is the chain or the fetter or one dependent on the next. And what I'm saying is the study of the language I saw is all about that. Each letter is in a very particular order. It's not a random association. The space between the letters, as I said before, the word meta means the connecting of the space between, and there's a whole nother study in that. We haven't ever talked about it, really. We'll do that later. It's all arranged on purpose. And the fact that Yahuwah did the arranging, because this word of the Hebrew alphabet being the word of John 1:1, in the beginning there was this word first, which then became manifest later as Yeshua, the human anthropomorphization of that word. But this word that he used to project the entire cosmos, that he so was with that word that he says it essentially is him or is with him. I was talking to, I believe it was Angelo, that did a whole study on that. And if you look at the Greek meaning of the words, it's different than your English take on John 1:1. And it'd be worth it to address that later. What I'm saying is that if we take the meaning of the English words, the word was Elohim, the word was with Elohim, we think we know what that means. But if you look at the words in Greek, there's a different meaning. And then if you look at the words in Hebrew, it'll give you yet a different meaning. And so to base your life, your doctrine, your reality on the English translation, I'm not saying you're going to burn in hell because you based your life on the English translation, but you're missing out on a huge slice of reality. And he knows that. And if he had these words hidden and sealed until the time of the end of the curse, what curse? Well, there's the great curse imposed on Ephraim, 2,730 years, Leviticus 26 with Ezekiel 4, which brings us to 2010 AD, CE, Common Era, which was now 12 years ago. And so did he do that so that he wouldn't have a blame to be imposed of intentional sin on all these last nearly 3,000 years of humans trying to walk in his ways? Oh, we were lied to, we were deceived, we were misguided. Yeah, that's right, that's part of the curse, because your forefathers wanted it that way. What? We're subject to our forefathers? Darn right. As a matter of fact, because your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moshe, David, other people, because they wanted to learn Yahuwah's ways, we're subject to their attitudes also when he gave them the great promise that we could be his people. Segula, to him, his great treasure. So we can't get too upset for being ripped off by catching the curse of our ancestors, because we also have the option to return and get the great blessing of our ancestors that he promised, which is this occasion. So what I'm saying here by mentioning all these words is that you look all over the place and the definitions of words all play into this concept. The core concept of the alphabet is what? Well, if you look at this map, it's just a big mishmash, like looking at the constellations, looking at the stars. Where do you start? I'm going to suggest a couple places to start. How can you start in 3 different places? Because it's a secret treasure map. You could start dead center. What that? A pig with a boomerang? What the heck is that supposed to be? None of the letters we've gone through suggest a pig with a boomerang. So why is it there? Or in English, we start at the top left and read across the top, and then go Okay, start there. But I'm suggesting, hey, here's the alphabetic letter sequence in the bottom right. So it'd be helpful to start there, because at least if you don't know anything about the letters, that's a place to start. So that just tells you the alphabetic letters. There's 7, and then these are written in code, kind of, sort of. 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, and then 1, and then 3 more. What does that mean? That doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just tells you it's time to take a break anyway. So we're gonna get into this presently. We'll take a break right now.